So, welcome to another happy podcast, and let's welcome Brian. Brian, thanks very much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And if you could do a brief introduction, tell us about your history and how StoreFeeder was founded.
Yeah, no problem. So my name's Brian Williamson, the founder and managing director of a company called StoreFeeder. Been running since 2008. It was acquired by Royal Mail in 2015, and I was expecting to leave, but I've stayed with them up until now, partly because of the good things that we've been able to do, but a bit of history of StoreFeeder. It came out of the need of, I worked at a fulfillment house, and for people who don't know, fulfillment house is where you store goods and then orders get called off and sent around the country. So sounds easy, but actually it's quite complex. We had many clients. I wrote a piece of software which was getting a lot of praise, and I went to the managing director of that fulfillment house and said, why are we only allowing customers to use this if they're fulfillment client? He said, brilliant idea. And I said, good. I said, but I want half. And then that's when StoreFeeder was born out of that. And I think it's really interesting just to touch on that. And I know we'll go for an array of topics today, but I'm a big believer in developing software to fulfill a need and having existing customers. So in many ways, I was very lucky because I had a leg up straight away to know what customers want and adding to the software and getting a lot of feedback. So that's a very brief history. That all happened in 2000, starting in 2004. And then in 2008, we took StoreFeeder to as its separate company. And as I say, 2015 purchased by Royal Mail.
Yeah.
Just to add, StoreFeeder also runs another piece of software, 𝘄𝗵𝗶𝗀, called Click and Drop, which is the reason why Royal Mail brought StoreFeeder. And that's been really, really successful. And that started in 2015 after the acquisition. Yeah,
and there was a little company called 𝗲𝗵𝗽𝗹 that helped in developing it.
𝗲𝗵𝗽𝗹 were pivotal at the time. So yes, it was. It's good because you were kind of there before and after at the start, and then obviously the inclusion of 𝗲𝗵𝗽𝗹. So in 2015, Royal Mail wanted results fast because the reason they purchased us, we developed a project, delivered a project in 12 weeks. From start to finish, and got it pen tested and live, and live customers transacting it. So the expectations were very high. So they brought the company, posed another challenge to me, and said we want it in 12 weeks. The challenge was too big to go through in 12 weeks, and we needed bums on seats. And that's when I reached out to you to get some more resources, which it did, and became a fundamental part of our success.
That's where it all started, in fact. So thanks for that. It worked out for both of us.
It did, very much so.
And yeah, regarding your previous point, where I wanted to interject is, I know you're a fan as much as myself of rework and 37 signals in general. And I remember one of the points in the rework book is when you develop a startup to scratch your own itch. So that's exactly what you did with StoreFeeder.
Yes, I'm a massive believer in that. And then there's a term which I don't particularly like, but eat your own dog food as well. So services that you develop, use as much as you can in as many different softwares.
Yes. Okay, and so you're pretty much an expert on e-commerce slash logistics, because that's where StoreFeeder is located, at the intersection of those two, right?
I'm not sure an expert, but I have a lot of experience.
Yeah. So how do you see this branch developing in the coming years? Do you see any trends that are emerging that might be worth discussing?
So I certainly know that on the logistics side, Amazon has definitely set the benchmark of what's acceptable really, really high. And obviously what I'm referring to is the prime and next day delivery and same day delivery. And it's funny because the geography of the UK allows for rapid delivery, but across Europe and other places in America, just through the landscape, the next day delivery isn't as needed or not as expected. But I think with the advances of technology, they're going to try and bridge that gap. I know Amazon have got fulfillment centers really close to urban areas, and I should imagine they're doing that in America, again, just to get the goods to people's hands as quickly as possible. And then the likelihood of drones seems a possibility. I remember 7 years ago, it was on the BBC website, And in fact, really this quick? And Royal Mail, in fact, used drones to get to some remote islands. So instead of having to get a ferry, which is very much web dependent and so on, they're using them as a daily basis. But the actual home delivery, it'll be exciting time to see how that pads out.
Yeah, so that's a pretty interesting last mile solution. At the moment, what is the most popular last mile option in the UK? Is it still couriers, or do you use parcel boxes, for example, and they become more and more popular?
I am seeing a flood of parcel boxes and lockers seem to be everywhere. Royal Mail have now embraced them through a recent change of leadership, which I think is a really positive move. The most is last mile by hand as it stands. I think there's a bit of time for people to adapt. I think it's funny because of working from home has allowed more deliveries to be received.
Yeah.
But if that hadn't have happened, I can imagine lockers may be more popular than they already are.
Yeah, in Poland they're an absolute hit. We've got thousands and thousands of them, and many companies competing, but there was one which was first that is quite successful and is expanding to Europe as well.
Okay.
Yeah. It's called InPost.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Familiar with InPost.
Yeah. And they even recently, well, not so recently, a few years ago, they're IPO'd on, I think, on the Dutch stock exchange or somewhere in West Europe.
Okay. We actually have InPost lockers in the UK.
Yeah, that's what I heard, that they're like pushing around other players, trying to get the scale as fast as possible.
It was really interesting to see Amazon to have their own lockers. It was a bold move, obviously, with their own couriers. It was a natural next step, but rather than use a third party for them to do the hard work themselves, with the resources of Amazon, they can pull it off.
Yeah. So you say that Amazon is the one to beat, definitely, in fulfillment. And do you think e-commerce businesses, they have a shot to, let's say, to do it on their own, I mean the fulfillment, or is it wiser to use FBA?
So there's a twofold answer to that. If your business is heavily dependent on Amazon, then it's naturally competitive, and you do get the buy box if you do use fulfillment by Amazon more. So it's built into the algorithms. So in some ways you don't have a choice, but then it does come. You still need to prepare those items. You still need some warehouse facilities, and it does come at a cost as well, especially if you do off-platform fulfillment. And I believe recently they have reduced the price, but it still is quite significant. There'll always be needs for your own warehouse, and personally I would worry that, would I really feel if I had a business, if I sent all my stuff to FBA and only majority sold on Amazon, then I would feel I had a business which didn't have solid foundations.
Yeah.
So I think every business should keep a broader horizon. Things happen, suspensions happen, competitors come in, prices change, and try and control as much of your own destiny as possible.
So in terms of retail, is Amazon the top option, or is there a more tight cooperation, well, not cooperation, but rivalry with some other brands?
I think Shopify is very much a welcome competitor. What they've done with their own login, so for instance, for my own personal use, if I go to another website and I notice on Shopify, then I know the checkout process is going to be really easy, because get a text message, put the code in, has all my details, I don't have to move off the sofa, I'm more likely to buy. And I'm so glad they've done that, because they've hit the exact convenience point that Amazon have hit. Done it in their own way. It really, really works, and I think that's been a big contributing factor to Shopify's success. So, and I think a lot of people, it's a bit like Tesco in here. At one point, a third of every pound spent in the UK was at Tesco, and they fell out of popularity. So now the Lidls and the Audis have put a bit more competition, and I kind of feel the same is happening with Amazon and the niche marketplaces which have popped up. And I say with the likes of Shopify, I think people get a bit sick and tired of one main competitor.
So when you grow too big, then you stop innovating. You think that's one of the reasons?
Well, that's traditionally, I think, happened, but with Amazon's They've got their graveyard of their projects which have never really worked. But their mantra is to fail fast, and out of 10 you might get 1 success. And when you've got the resources that they can put behind, and if they're still following that through, which I believe they are, then I still think they are a very worthy competitor, and not yet resigned to the cliche of a big business oil tanker too slow. I don't think they're in that.
Yeah, but maybe what I meant is maybe they don't focus those innovations on the shop itself, on the buying experience, but yeah, they do some other products and some side projects. But the shopping experience is still quite archaic, and the UX on Amazon is not famous for being top-notch, I think.
It's functional rather than pretty, is the way I put it, yeah. I can see what you're saying there. Nothing, it doesn't feel like a great deal has massively changed.
But it works. So, yeah. It ain't broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
I know that you yourself also struggle with this, how to keep agility and be nimble while the organization is growing. What are your latest thoughts on that?
I think feedback loops are absolutely imperative at every stage of the development and after release as well. We've got many in, and I'm big believer of feedback loops all the way along. And what that allows you to do is keep really close to the customers. So personally, I still onboard some customers on the StoreFeeder side, and we do try and keep as close as we can to click and drop. And so to keep nimble, and I know there's many areas to your question there, because how do you actually keep nimble when you're kind of the responsibility of the throughput of the software and then the risks? And I understand that part of the question, but I think it's so key. And I think what happens as companies expand, they get further away from the actual customers, and then they lose sight of what the customers want, and they become internal facing, and their product then slowly over time starts mimicking that. So if your question was about the processes as well, it comes down to the appetite for risk and how do you mitigate that risk. So having canary deployments, trying to test stuff out with beta programs, making sure that you're not bogging yourself down with so much red tape to get a release out. About 4 years ago, I went to a conference and 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝘀 were there, and it was like, yeah, we release, when someone joins, we get them to deploy on the same day as their first deployment, and this blew my mind. But actually, one of our software development managers, Sean, he brought this home and really to task. And the idea, and to answer your question about keeping nimble, is to keep people held responsibility. So if you're releasing little and often, and someone's got a story, and that person is held accountable, bad use of words there, is responsible to release that to live, and after live he's there monitoring the logs and making sure it's successful. That has been the biggest contributor to us still remaining nimble, and that's a process I'm very happy we've got well trodden in the business.
Yeah, and I think it also, the added benefit is that it builds more of a sense of responsibility and commitment in the developers as well.
Yeah, and as you know from working with StoreFeeder for so long, as an ex-developer myself, I never really wanted to be really prescriptive with the stories. So yes, there has to be direction, but if someone's spending a couple of hours, a couple of days writing a story, but someone's working on it for 2 weeks, they're going to look at improvements, and that wiggle room I think is really needed by the developer to feel the ownership as well. So it's actually shaping what things do and allowing people to come back, go, oh, Brian, I've had a look at this. I'd like to add this to this story. I'd like to do that. And most of the time it's a brilliant idea and it gets in, they feel happy, we get better software, and it's a win-win.
Yeah. I know that you yourself, you've invested quite a lot of time recently into your self-development, doing some courses and going back to uni as well. So yeah. Can you share with us some insights that you got from this journey and how you use that?
Yeah, the major insight I got was that everyone has problems. So the growing pains is you feel that your problems are so unique and no one could possibly understand because you've created these set of circumstances and you've been with something for so long that you're on your own and it's hard. And actually, when you start speaking to people, start, say, putting on courses and making yourself vulnerable, that's when you kind of get some invaluable feedback. And it's really, really cathartic to find out that other people, albeit slightly different, but very similar problems, and you're not on your own, and you're not making mistakes, and you're making the right decisions, and some fundamental practical advice on how to deal with certain situations.
Yeah. Have you read anything interesting recently that you can share? You're quite a bookworm.
The last book, it's been out for a little while, but the one which has sort of sat with me the most is The 33 Laws by 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝘀. I think it's a really, really good book. It appeals to my kind of personality, and the way that he's done like takeaways from each one, so like sound bites, quotes. The way he's written it, I think it appeals to a dyslexic brain like I've got.
And what a success he's had with a podcast in the recent years as well.
Yes, he's a very talented guy, and a very hardworking guy, because you do not get that success without putting the hours in.
Yeah, if he continues, he might give Joe Rogan a run for his money, I think.
He just might, What makes me laugh is that it's still kind of branded as a business podcast, and it's so much more than that now. And I think probably a name change is probably due, just to attract more listeners, because I can imagine the name itself would put people off.
Oh, that's interesting. That's not something I've thought about. But yeah, if you don't know what it is and you're not interested in business topics,
yeah,
you would miss a lot of good content.
And he's brave enough to do a name change and not just stay safe. Yeah.
Interesting. We'll see. We can take bets on it and then come back to it in a few years.
We can.
I asked you about e-commerce a little bit, and that's one of our specializations here at Happy Team. But we also recently get deeper and deeper into electromobility and new energy in general, so EVs and green generation, etc. And you have some experiences driving EVs. Could you share your EV journey? Could you maybe tell us how's the charging infrastructure in the UK? Have you had any problems with it? And what are your experiences with your own electric vehicles?
So I've probably had an EV for about 5 years, if not a little longer. So in the UK, probably a little bit of an early adopter. We got a straight away home charger. The majority of our charging is at home. So we've actually not done many long trips where we need to have multiple charges. That's partly because we've got multiple cars, so not necessarily needed. My views on it is that we are still a little bit behind where we need to be, but the price of charging on the motorways, when you do the equivalent for the mileage you get back, is there, or if not more expensive than petrol, and that's something that needs to be looked at for me. I think people buy it for potentially the eco reasons, but I know that's up for the debate, from what you do with the batteries and manufacturer and get rid of your old car, and I have an appreciation for that. But when it comes to the next, is normally cost, and if that it needs to be solved. And actually, I was looking around London, and it was I was walking around London the other day, and it was really good to see at the lampposts some charging cables. So these lampposts were curbside, so not interrupting the flow of traffic, and then people plugging in. And I've not seen that before, and I thought that was a great innovation, and help people who might not have a driveway, because that's a big blocker. Ideally, I feel you have to have a home charger, and if you don't have a driveway to do it, then it's a little bit awkward. So I think there's many things that need to be solved, and often there's alternative options coming out as well.
Yeah, definitely. At this stage, in Poland even more, because the charging infrastructure is much worse than in the UK. If you're not able to charge your car at home, then it's not a good fit, I guess.
Yeah,
I advise against it, and I do advise against it to my friends who are asking me, because I'm also an early adopter. And the people who know me, they know that I have quite a lot of knowledge, and they ask me, but yeah, that's the first question. Are you able to charge it at home? No, buddy, that's not for you, not at this stage.
You have done some long trips though, haven't you? Some long drives.
Yeah, that's That's the benefit of having a Tesla. I know that you have other thoughts about Elon. Maybe we may come to it later in this discussion. But the benefit of having a Tesla is that it charges fast, and it's got also a long range once it's charged. And you, apart from the publicly available chargers, you also have superchargers from Tesla. Right. Although the superchargers have been opening for other brands as well. I know certainly in the UK it's possible to charge other cars. So that's no longer an advantage that's unique to Teslas. But yeah, every Tesla basically that is currently on sale, you can do at least 200 miles on the motorway before you have to charge, and then up to 300 miles on country roads. So you can get pretty far, given that then after 200 miles on the motorway, you need to charge for like half an hour, possibly get something quick, a quick bite to eat, and you're on your way, and you can do another 150 miles.
I've seen, because it is kind of limited, I've seen people having to queue to charge over here. Again, when you've got kids in the back and you want to get going to your destination, deadlines to hit becomes a bit of a problem. Am I right in thinking Elon sacked his supercharger team recently? Have I remembered that correctly? Yeah, it's an interesting move.
It's it was definitely a rash decision, I think, from what I've heard, but I don't think it's been confirmed. He was expecting every division to do some cuts. Right. Charging was one of the divisions that didn't do as many cuts as he wanted, so he fired all of them.
Wow.
That's one story. The other story is that he was not happy with the pace of innovation in there. And so, yeah, so he did what he does.
It's a bold move.
Yeah. And obviously, yeah, it causes a lot of problems, but I don't know. The past few years or even more, like a couple of decades, show that he seems to know what he's doing. So I tend to reserve my judgment until I see the final outcomes.
Yeah.
Because the process is messy, and actually we can tie that into the back to our business, like software development, and discuss Twitter or X. Because when he bought Twitter, he fired like 75% of staff. And everybody said that the service is going to collapse and it's going to be in ruin, and he will damage it irreparably. But it still seems to be working pretty well.
I feel different. I'm not an avid Twitter or X user, but all the reports I have, yes, the uptime's there, but the content, the amount of spam, the junk you get in, it's the quality you get is definitely, and that's because he's taken the moderators out, hasn't he? Which is quite a lot. So yeah, I think he's done a real damage to that as a platform. He's no doubt he's a genius, and he's one of a lifetime kind of minds. That's undisputed, but that comes with emotional decisions, or because I know when he signed everyone over, he said, "You're going to work long hours. We're going to do great things, and if you want to stay, you can. But just don't complain." I'm summarizing.
Yeah.
That's on one hand, but then I think when Apple or other big advertisers are threatening to pull, then his emotional side kicks in, and the weight of those people who were working the long hours who stuck with him wasn't considered. He just went on his emotional side. That's why I have. I'm not taken along with kind of on his magical ride that a lot of people are. I just see it as. Yeah, we all make mistakes, but it's playing with people's lives.
Yeah, he's definitely not taking collateral damage into his calculations at all.
No, he's not. But
what I meant about Twitter is from the pure software development side. It's pretty amazing that you fire 2/3 or 3/4 of your team, and you still manage to develop the new features and keep the site running, etc. So it shows how much bloated the Silicon Valley companies are. And I'm pretty sure it's similar with Apple and Google and maybe Amazon, maybe not so much. For some reason, I have more expectation that Bezos is still keeping it slim.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting comparison. I'd like to know what he actually did, because there's no way he just got rid of those people without looking at the processes. I hope he empowered people and said, look, if I'd rather you move fast and if mistakes happen rather than trying to get everything sorted, you know, and completely risk-free. And that's why it's taken some time. I hope he's had those conversations, but we're not privy to them. But I can imagine.
There is some description of those early Twitter takeover days in his bio. It was quite an interesting read. The one by Walter Isaacson. So although it's a big one, it's a hefty investment, but it's quite interesting.
Is that the one where you followed him for a year?
Yeah, I think even more than a year. Yeah, he was part of every meeting, shadowing him and taking notes.
And the same gentleman did Steve Jobs as well, didn't he? And
and Leonardo da Vinci and Benjamin Franklin. Yeah, he's good at it.
I'll have to give it a read.
Yeah. Okay. Could you tell us about your experience with your specific EVs? Which ones did you have, and how happy you were with them?
So we had a Golf, so electric Golf, which was a really fun car to drive, but I don't think I'd ever, and they're probably not manufacturing them now, but buy a car which wasn't an EV from the ground up. And then we moved to Toyota, a BZX4, which the interface is not great. The range is really good, but it was a new car, so the batteries are, you know, haven't worn in. So I'm expecting that to deteriorate. The size is great, but yeah, when you work in software design and you see some of the decisions which are made are infuriating, and I can't get past it. But every time I sit in there, it's like, why have we done this like this? Some very simple changes would make it a lot better.
Yeah, and so you mentioned battery degradation. Have you seen some significant degradation with the e-Golf?
Oh yes, over time. So when we got it, so we had it for about 2 or 3 years, probably, I don't know, lost about 20 to 30%. We only got it as a runaround, you know, for taxiing the kids and so on. But yes, it definitely did reduce over time. And in the winter, it is terrible, absolutely terrible, scarily terrible.
Yeah. And how about the software integration in terms of the mobile app? Did you have a mobile app for the Volkswagen, and do you have one for the Toyota? And can you tell us about the usability of that?
The VW one was okay. The Toyota one is pretty basic. I was expecting more. The best one I've had is probably a Volvo, and I know you were asking specifically about EVs, but that was really elegant. They carried on the kind of style and easy to use. So that set the benchmark in my mind. So in comparison, the other two aren't great.
Yeah, Volvo also, they do EVs, and interestingly, within a month, we'll be picking up our Volvo 𝗶𝗶𝗶𝘁𝗲, which is an EV on a new platform. Well, done with cooperation with Geely, the owner of Volvo. And what's interesting, I only learned about this recently, that, yeah, as you mentioned, they have a really good app for their existing fleet of cars, for like the XC40s, XC90s, etc.
Yeah.
But now for the 𝗶𝗶𝗶𝗃, they developed a totally separate app for some reason. So I only heard about this recently, and I started thinking about this because in case of Tesla, for example, you have one app for all the models. Yeah. And it makes sense to me. So I'm wondering why they would do that, because you know that they are setting themselves for some problems down the line. People will be downloading the wrong app, they need to support 2 apps, etc. So it's quite an interesting.
I wonder if you're trying to align with Polestar or anything like that, and leverage something, because my understanding that the new platform is given to the other brands. Yeah. So maybe there's some kind of alignment there, but that's me taking a while to stab in the dark.
Yeah. It's quite tricky, though. It's just was quite surprising. That's more or less my list of questions for you done. Maybe there are some topics that you wanted to discuss that we didn't touch upon.
At the start, you said about the sort of software development process. And probably just want to touch on the importance, in my experience, to empower the team. Now, we've got a great team on both sides of the business, people who really care, who are really dedicated, really customer focused. And it does make life, because you're having the right type of conversations, it's so easy to get insular focused and go on the least path of resistance and not remember who you are servicing. And probably just to bring it back down to when the company was first purchased, there was a bit of friction of who the customer was. And in my mind, Royal Mail was never the customer. They were the investor. And I wanted to be judged on the KPIs that actually made a lot of sense. So just to try and sum it up, having KPIs that are meaningful, not did you deliver it on time and on budget? They aren't, you know, how is it used? Is it generating any revenue? What's the uptime? What's the capacity? Don't be afraid to be able to ramp things up as well, because you see some businesses who, like, you should embrace a challenge, a technical challenge. So the throughput of some of the Royal Mail systems is many, many thousands of labels per second at absolute peak. If we was shied away from those kind of requirements at the start, or we can never do it, then you can never become as good as you want to be. And setting the bar really high really helps with the team to know that they are doing a great job. They're working on a great piece of software, and we've got the KPIs to match them, and we're really serving the customers. And I think it's a really fine balance when you get into the corporate world of what good looks like. That was a big difference. What good in my mind was and what good in a corporate world was different. And there's some good takings from the corporate world as well, and I've learned some stuff and hopefully put it into practice. So it's probably the only area I wanted to touch on, that and feedback loops. You know, right from automated testers failing, you know, we use the Elk stack, which is inevitable, but then also post-release feedback loops.
Yeah, and I would add regarding the team, because it's more or less, it's right about this time, it's 9 years that we started working together.
Yeah.
On the Royal Mail solutions. And some of the people that we hired early into the process are still with us. Most of them actually are still with us.
They certainly are, and happy for them too as well. And this is, again, having people who care, and the people from Happy Team gel so well with our employees. I think the pandemic did change the relationship for the better. Not that it needed, but quite often calls would happen or meetings would happen when we're all on premise there. You'd have some people on the phone, and it is all a bit different. Now default, quite a lot of people work remote, your guys, our guys, and it's even the playing field. And I think that's really helped moving forward. Yeah,
I remember that was a big point of tension. That we couldn't hear you that well when you were in the conference room, and there was some chit chat going on at the side, etc. And that was quite an impediment, but it got leveled out now that you're also remote first. And what I would also add, and I think it's a good a testament to how well you manage the upskilling of your staff, is that those people that are with us 8+ years, they are not like getting out of touch with the latest stuff, and they are still being challenged, and they develop their skills, because we've got new people coming with new ideas, and we re-engineer the solutions that we did a few years ago because we find a new way to do things, etc. So that's quite inspiring as well.
So yeah, I've seen two things happen through the course of my career, and that is owners becoming bottlenecks, so wanting to make the final decisions and not comfortable enough in their role to release control. And that is a deadly thing to happen. And the second is not investing and assuming that things don't change. So technology doesn't change, or the needs of customers don't change. And then all of a sudden, by the time you realize it's too late, and they were two mistakes I never wanted to make. Interestingly enough, the original software I wrote was in web forms for StoreFeeder. And we've got a variety of different platforms now and software stacks. But I knew for a long time that we wouldn't be able to keep engaged our existing developers if we kept on that platform, or hire any new talent. And we can deliver a better experience with the new technologies as well. So you just have to keep your eye on what's actually happening. But it is a good point that normally technical people do move around quite a bit, and somehow we've managed to retain them And I think that's down to the ownership, because they truly do have ownership on what we give them. We don't just write a story in a very prescriptive, they get their say. And I think that's a testament to why they stay. And I must say, it's the quality of the candidates as well. The right attitude and the technical skills, both what you provide and what I've been lucky enough to hire, has been a really, really fortunate mix.
Yeah, and also with the advent of AI, well, if you have developers that they need to have a very precise description of what is to be implemented, pretty soon they can be all replaced with ChatGPT.
Yes, I think the percentage of code being correct is currently about 30%. I read, but that will only increase. I think there's also it's the code writing, but it's also the build up to the code. So how can the system and AI help from story writing, from roadmap planning, all the way up to testing, writing test plans, as well as just the code. It does scare me, the term of prompt engineers, and apparently that's what we're all going to turn into. It's exciting times. It's definitely the next industrial revolution in my mind of where this will take us. I'm a firm believer, and I love what Microsoft have called it, Copilot, for their offering, because I think for a long time there'll be sanity checks. It will be working with, but I'm under no illusion. In the end, it's going to get very interesting.
Yeah, Microsoft is going pretty hard on Copilot. They've just released the latest version of the Surface laptop and the Surface Pro, and there is a dedicated Copilot button on the keyboard.
Oh, I think I remember reading this a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it's the biggest hardware change since putting the Windows key in. Yes.
Yeah, it shows you that they are pretty damn serious about it, and you wouldn't blame them, because it's quite a heated battle between all of the tech giants.
Yes, it's so exciting to where this is going to pad out, but both from a technical, but also from personal perspective. Personal assistants and so on. It's exciting times.
It's exciting times, but also risky. Some people are worried that AI will become our new overlord.
Yeah, we've embraced it by partnering with a company called Decision Labs, who are going to look at a forecasting model, and that for buying stock. So looking at usage, trends, seasonality, weather, and so on. And we want to get that into StoreFeeder. But again, that will be done in a Copilot way of going, we suggest, do you agree, rather than we've built out this form and sent it to the supplier. And then it'll be dynamic slotting of where the item should go for the best optimization around the warehouse. So that's a really exciting project. And we've got, again, coming back to our start point, is I wanted to identify the need from people. So we've got two of our biggest clients on StoreFeeder who are fully on board with us at the design stage of this, and see how this pads out. So I can't wait to update you on it, Kuba.
Cool. So so that's actually leading to another question that I have. You have to react to all those changes around you. AI is definitely one of the biggest that we need to adapt to. When you look forward a few years ahead, what other changes do you see that will be maybe on the one hand forced on you due to the changes around, and also what others do you want to implement out of your own volition, let's say?
Oh, that's some big questions you're asking there, Kuba. So, do you mean in a professional?
I mean in terms of leading StoreFeeder. Yeah. What do you think? Where are you heading in the next few years, and why? What you'll have to adapt to?
So customers' expectations, quite rightly, are always increasing. I love healthy competition. So in many ways, although we want to be at the forefront of a lot of innovations, and we are, but you also have to keep pace of what your competitors are doing and keep an eye on. So we're on a river of a flow where we've been not forced is the wrong word, but if you want to stay relevant, then you have to keep abreast of what's happening. But to answer your question specifically about what do I see forced upon us, it's probably the AI. People will get convenience in their personal life and expect that convenience in any application they run, and not have to put their hard yards in. And I also think with the language models, they will expect reports to be not click here, build a report. It will be so dynamic. It will be get me my top 10 selling products which were read over the last 4 years, and write that in and expect instantly to be able to get that data. This is where the convenience of people will want, and if we're not able to do that, then I feel they will look elsewhere. So that's certainly what's on my mind.
Yeah, that's what I heard also. Some predictions that actually the AI assistant will be the preferred interface to most of the software within a few years.
Yes, it'll be load this order, edit this order, yeah, and obviously with the linking that to voice as well, and then put it through the language processor. Yeah, it's. Do you remember the film Minority Reports?
Yeah.
It's getting a bit like that, isn't it? Swipe here, talk to it, and see what happens.
Also, yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to say I'm so glad that I get to see these changes. That I was at not the very start of where computers were, but quite early on, and seeing where it's taken. I feel very blessed to be working in technology at this time.
Yeah. And also, if you mention the movies, then the recent preview of ChatGPT 4.0, it like brought memories of the movie Her, where the guy fell in love with his virtual assistant.
Yes, I know, but we've got a loneliness epidemic, haven't we? So you can see it happening. I know.
The sci-fi movies, one by one, they will start to become historic movies. I think.
Let's not hope for Waterworld or anything like that, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe not 𝗵𝗵𝗽𝗀. Yeah. I had a really good question for you there.
Sorry if I threw you off track.
No, I think I threw myself off track. What were we talking about? GitHub? No, the ChatGPT.
So the language models and then ChatGPT 4.0.
Okay, that's gone.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think unless you wanted to add anything, I think we might call it a day.
Well, Cameron, I just want to thank you for what you've helped do for Click and Drop and StoreFeeder over the years. As I said at the start, you've been pivotal. Your guys really, really help what we have managed to achieve, and I hope it lasts for many years moving forward.
Thanks very much. I will just have to say that we appreciate the opportunity that we got, and we really appreciate that we've been able to grow together with StoreFeeder, and we benefited a lot from that relationship and learned a lot in the journey.
Yes, we're becoming old hats now, aren't we? A lot of experience under our belts.
No, yeah, it's a shame that we're remote, because that's a moment where we should give each other a hug.
Yes, we should.
Okay, have a good day, Brian. Take care.
Okay, thank you, 𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗶𝘀. Take care.